But Beast in Ice is a powerful tormented boss, known most for his perfect visual clarity. You know, when you mix white on white with some character spell effects, the entire floor looks the same, thus you stand at all the mechanics. In today's video, I'm going to spend some time going over his key mechanics, i.e. the ones you have to dodge or you're probably going to get killed. Then, do the fight, talk through it a little bit so you can see the strategy. And after that, get into some bonus stuff. You know, where do you find this beast? Why is he in the ice? What materials do you need? How do you get those? And what sort of epic loot can you get if you succeed against this dangerous and deadly tormented boss? Or at the very least a boss that is dangerous and deadly when you're under-geared that you will probably more or less one-shot later. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, stick around because we're about to get started. First up, his basic attacks. They really aren't all that dangerous, but whenever he attacks, his sword releases ice crystals. These shatter after traveling a short distance, which then releases a bunch of smaller ice spikes. And since each attack releases multiple crystals that then release multiple spikes, this can be a very visually chaotic move. In general, your goal isn't to dodge all of them, it's to dodge most of them. And one of the ways you can do this is by getting behind the boss rather than standing in front of him and letting him constantly swing at you. Getting behind him is especially important because occasionally he's going to use a breath attack that releases even more ice crystals, and this is pretty darn dangerous if you're standing directly in front of him, even if any of the individual attacks aren't that bad on their own. There's simply so damn many of them, but if you're standing in the cone, it's gonna hurt a lot. But you dodging all of his attacks is going to make the beast angry, very angry. When he gets angry, he's going to slam his weapon repeatedly into the ground, generating multiple circles that you're gonna have to stand in the small spaces between, otherwise you're going to take considerable damage after delay when they detonate. These circles cover more or less the entire screen, so it's not like you can just run in a given direction. You really do have to watch the pattern and do your best to stand in between them. Now for most of the rest of the fight, he's going to be using these moves, but after he takes a little damage, he adds one more. A leaping attack, where he jumps into the air before slamming down, creating a large circle. Get out of a circle. Get away from the boss. Use a movement skill. This comes out pretty quickly and it hits very, very hard. If you have a powerful defensive, maybe a Sork who can just immune the damage, this is a good time to pop that immunity because if you stand in the main slam, it's very likely that you're going to be low. And the attack releases a whole bunch of ice crystals that shatter, creating even more spikes, which are probably going to hit you. So if you're not fast for a defensive, it's very likely this move will kill you. But if you're able to deal with all of these, then you should be ready for his intermission. This is where things get really dangerous, especially because the floor becomes lava and it can be difficult to see. During the intermission, a storm is summoned around the outside of a room. This happens at 66 and 33% health, though after the 33% intermission, the blizzard becomes permanent, rendering the outer portion of a room inaccessible to you. During this intermission, you need to kill all of the adds. And in particular, be careful of the enemies that explode. But while you're doing it, the beast is going to be doing a bunch of strafing runs. These cause lines to appear on the floor. There's always going to be one safe space, and all the rest of the floor is bad. If you get hit by the beast's attack, you're knocked sideways and into the storm, which in most cases is death. Two things help here. First of all, when he is not doing a strafing run, try to stand near the center of a room. This way, it's the shortest possible distance to any of the safe spaces, no matter which it chooses. Number two, if you are going to get hit by the strafing run, use a source of unstoppable. That way, you won't be knocked into the storm, and it makes the intermission much, much easier. Just keep in mind that again, once the beast reaches 33% health and does his second intermission, the entire remainder of the fight is like this, so it pays to practice and get good enough that you're not getting hit consistently. Now after the first intermission, the beast returns, crashing back into the arena and dealing some damage, and he gains one new move, where he plants his blade into the ground and begins to channel an attack that causes 4 icy explosions targeted at your location. Each explosion releases 5 waves in a pentagon formation. So, to avoid this, you want to keep moving, but every time you see lines projected under your character, move a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. Getting hit once is unlikely to kill you, but if you get hit once and get frozen and tank the entire mechanic, that is very likely to kill you. So try to have a source of unstoppable ready to help counteract the freeze. Aside of that, he goes back to using all of his other moves, and the phase continues just like phase 1. At 33% health, he goes into that second intermission, There's some new adds, they're named demons, they're a little bit tankier, but it really is very much the same stuff until after you kill the adds, and the beast comes back, where again, you have much less room to maneuver now, because the storm is ever present, and you have to be careful about where you're positioning because he's doing those strafing runs that can knock you into that deadly storm. And to make everything worse, you know that plant his blade into the ground icy explosion move that he was using before? Now it's even deadlier, where on the final explosion, there's a second spread of 5 more icy waves for a total of 10. This means if you simply move to the side to dodge the first wave, you're probably going to get hit by the second unless you position really carefully or dodge a second time. But unfortunately, between the storm and the general visual clutter at this point, it can be pretty hard to see a lot of this stuff, so if you have any way to get permanent unstoppable, that's a huge advantage, because then at least you won't be knocked into the storm, and at least you won't have to worry about being frozen. You'll just have to deal with the damage, but hey, defenses are a thing, and most of his moves don't hit that hard all on their own. If only 1 or 2 are hitting you, it's probably fine, but if all of them are hitting you at once, then it's going to be deadly. Though you have to choose between what hits you, be really careful to not get hit by the strafing move, because that strafing move, in addition to knocking you into the storm, does also permanently increase the damage you take for the rest of the fight, making it extremely lethal. And so with his basic mechanics out of the way, here's an example of the Beast and Ice fight. Right off the start, he crashes down. Yes, that is technically unavoidable room-wide damage, but it doesn't hit very hard. Now you'll notice I'm trying to position myself behind him as I deal damage, provided he's attacking. This is to try to avoid most of his icy projectiles. Phase 1 doesn't last very long. Going into the intermission, I stick near the center of a room. I watch for the lines on the ground. I'm not worried too much about the adds. They'll die eventually, it's fine. They aren't super dangerous. But what I really need to do is make sure I don't get hit by the lines on the ground and I don't get knocked into the storm. Adds down. Time to fight the beast. Oh wait, never mind. He's doing his channel move. So I lure it out by the pillar. You can deal with this whatever way you think is easiest. Basically just watch for the lines, move out of the bursts. From there, the boss has pretty little health, so it's into intermission again. But again, I'm sticking near the middle of the room, watching for the lines moving left to right, trying to avoid getting myself knocked into the storm. I am DPSing down the 2 demons. It takes a little bit longer. DPS is not a priority in that phase. It is all about dodging, dodging, dodging. If you can dodge everything, you will be fine. Then the boss returns, again doing damage, immediately goes into a leap move. I play defensive here so that I don't take damage from the storm. Then, after he lands, I avoid the projectiles, go back in on the boss. And in this case, as it turns out, he does a breath attack, which is perfect because during the breath attack he doesn't move, which is the best time to DPS him down, especially when there's no lines beneath your feet. Bringing the fight to a close and, oh look, a nice pile of loot. Again, if you're struggling with the intermission phases, try to get some source of unstoppable, ideally having it permanently. And consider having the mercenary Rehair. He will absorb 1 blow that would have otherwise dealt significant damage to you. Since the knockback of the strafing run hits very, very hard, it is very likely to absorb this move, thus kind of giving you 1 free hit where you don't get knocked into the storm. But alright, that's the fight. Now let's talk about some of the extras. Starting with where to find the Beast and Ice. Step 1, head to Kjovashad. Then travel southwest and around into the Glacial Fissure. This kind of looks like a dungeon, which makes sense because the Beast and Ice is associated with dungeon mechanics. Remember, to fight the beast, you need to be in at least Torment 1. In fact, if you're trying to farm Distilled Fear to fight the Beast and Ice, Nightmare Dungeons is your best bet. Throughout the run, you'll encounter some elites, and these are very likely to drop a nice little pile of Distilled Fear. So next time you're farming a little bit, trying to masterwork some gear, keep an eye out for that Distilled Fear and maybe go to the Beast and Ice afterwards. Among other things, he tends to drop a lot of gloves, including the Fists of Fate, which is highly desired by multiple builds. So here's what he drops currently. With that said, these drops may change in the future. So head over to the guide at Maxwell.gg if you want to see the most up-to-date list. With that said, those are the Beast and Ice's mechanics, how to fight him, where to find him, and of course, what you need to farm if you want to do battle with him, plus some of the stuff that he drops should you be successful. If you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out my guides on Gregory the Galvanic Saint or Varshan, 2 of the other tormented bosses available in Diablo 4. Those will be up in the card and down below. And if you're looking for information on any of the other tormented bosses, do be sure to get subscribed, ring that notification bell, that way you'll be notified as soon as I upload the additional videos, and hey, maybe leave a like while you're down there. After all, you got to the end of the video, so you probably enjoyed it. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of a Beast and Ice. I just kind of find the fight annoying, plus who wants to be frozen, who wants to do all of his transitions. I don't know, it's fine, with enough DPS you can skip all the annoying parts, but it's definitely not my favorite. On the other hand, if I did have to pick a favorite, it would probably be Gregory. The fight's really well designed, simple enough to understand, but a little bit tricky to execute due to his interactions with environmental mechanics. Though with that said, I'm curious. What's your favorite or least favorite Tormented boss? Leave some of those down in the comments below. With that said, thanks for watching to the end, I'm glad you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.